last night. But we're glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. There's an idea that God is this loving God that wants to spend time with you, with me. And it knows even more than maybe we do sometimes the thing that's going to bring us the most fulfillment, the most happiness, the most purpose. And that every day is a chance that we get to try, a chance that we get to push in and be more. And that there's no amount of failure to that keeps God away from us. So I want to encourage you as we're singing to just make yourself available to whatever that spiritual experience may be today. You love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us. We cannot contain. And you love will surely come find us like blazing wildfires, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design, and may this offering stretch across the sky, and these hallelujahs be multiplied. stretch across the sky. These hallelujahs be multiplied. These hallelujahs be multiplied. God of mercy, oh God of mercy. Sometimes I feel perfect. Sometimes I am ashamed. Sometimes I am so grateful. Sometimes it's too much pain, but you turn to beautiful, yeah, you turn it into beauty, yeah, you turn it all to beautiful, and you do it all for me. Sometimes I feel you near me. Sometimes you're far away. Sometimes I feel like so that I can find you love, you life that transcends these times. Help me see so that I can find you love, you life that transcends these times. We turn it all to beautiful. You turn it into beauty. Yeah, you turn it all to beautiful. You do it all for me. Turn it all to beautiful. You turn it all to beautiful. You turn it all to beautiful. We were sitting outside my front yard yesterday. There's a lady walking her dogs, and sort of a new neighborhood for me, and I don't know anyone there, and not sure how well I'll fit in. But anyway, she was walking by, and I cracked some joke because she had three dogs, and said, "Do you want another one? I have one." She laughed, and we started talking, and quickly found out that she lost her husband. Her husband had died that year. And then found out that he had alcoholism, and actually died from that. The medical complications around that, and the amount of trauma that had brought her marriage, her family for so many years. And been less than a year, and it happened that we, sitting out there, actually had quite a bit of experience with grief. And it was so cool just to tell her, like, look, I know this sucks now, but my experience says that the pain may not go away, but something really beautiful can actually come out of something so terrible. And it's really hard to make that logic when you are going through it. But with my loss of family or struggle with addiction or whatever the things were that were dark and hard and messy, I can look back at many of them and see something I feel like God allowed me to experience that gave me more meaning, more purpose, more depth. The colors are brighter. My relationships are more important. So as we sing that chorus, I want you to think about what's your mountain? What's your suffering? What's your hole you had to jump in or pushed in? And do you see the beauty yet? And if you don't, I want to just encourage you that it's there. That you will, if you look for it. You turn it all to beautiful. Yeah, you turn it into beauty. Yeah, you turn it all to beautiful. And you do it all for me.
God is my shepherd, I won't be wanting, I won't be wanting. He makes me rest in fields of green and quiet streams. Even though I walk through the valley of death and dying, I will not fear, 'cause you are with me, you're always with me. Your shepherd's staff comforts me. You are my feet in the presence of enemies. Surely goodness will follow me, will follow me in the house of God forever. House of God forever. God is my shepherd, I won't be wanting, I won't be wanting. He makes me rest in fields of green with quiet streams. Even though I walk through the valley of death and dying, I shepherd's staff comforts me. You are my feast in the presence of enemies. Surely goodness will follow me, will follow me. In the house of God forever. House of God forever. In the house of God forever. House of God forever. In the house of God forever.
Amen. You may be seated.
Well, good morning, everybody. How are you guys doing this morning? Decent? Okay. I know it's busy, and the season's busy, and everything is just seems like it's moving a million miles an hour, and it's not slowing down, at least not for the next 2 weeks, because in 2 weeks it is Easter. And so I'm going to give you just a couple things that we are doing leading up until that point. Next Sunday, April 10th, we're going to be doing an event called the Riverbend Essentials, which happens up in the Welcome Center immediately following this service and the 9:30 service. So if you have any questions about who we are, how we operate, what it is that we do, how we impact our community, our city, you're going to want to come out to that. You can ask as many questions as you like. We've got some staff up there, and you can find out what it is that we do and what makes Riverbend, Riverbend. But the weekend after that is when we kick off all things Easter. Starting with Thursday. Thursday, we actually are going to start doing our Good Friday services. It's Thursday and Friday. Between Thursday and Friday, we will have 6 of these services. Now, for those of you who don't know, these services, we do not actually have the technology to stream them. They're down in the Smith Family Chapel, so they are live only. And the reason we have to do 6 of them is there's not a lot of capacity in that building. We can only fit 300 plus people in there. And so what you'll want to do is go to riverbend.com/Easter and reserve a spot. They are free, but you'll want to do that because the latter services on Friday evening will fill up fast. So get online, reserve some spots so that you can come to one of those services. The Good Friday service, next to the daddy-daughter dance, the Good Friday service is probably my favorite thing we do here. It is a really intimate service, really powerful, that finishes with this experience where you get to kind of tour the Remembrance Gardens. If you've never done that before, it's an amazing time and you will not want to miss it. But right after Friday, we jump into Saturday, which is very heathenistic of us. We're going to do the extravaganza, which is like 10,000 Easter eggs and bunnies and games. And I don't even think we put a cross anywhere. It's a weird event, to be honest with you. But it's awesome because our children just go ham on a field full of 10,000 Easter eggs. And this impacts thousands and thousands of kids who maybe for the first time in their life step foot on a church campus just to hunt Easter eggs. And we never know what's actually going on then. But let me tell you, of the 10,000, my children take away like 2 each because they like stop and open them and like eat them like mid-field. And I'm like, no, you're supposed to be robbing other children of their eggs. Come on. You don't know how this works. That's why I keep having children. I'm hoping maybe by the 5th one, we'll have a kid that actually knows how to hunt eggs. But it's an amazing time. Last year, it poured rain. And I don't know if anybody knows, but my hair is really curly, but I flat iron it. And that day, it showed. I had like a fro, and it was amazing, but it did not stop the children from having a blast. They went crazy on the day, and you will not want to miss that one either. Just come on out. That's the Saturday before Easter. And then the next day, Sunday, is Easter. We are doing only 2 services, and they are here in this building, 9 a.m. and 11. So if you come to this service regularly, on time, then you'll be on time on Sunday, Easter Sunday. If you come to this service at 11:20, you'll be 20 minutes late for that service, and you won't want to miss it. Honestly, this is the one where we go all out, and it's a total blast, and it's just an incredible celebration, and this place is packed out, and we'll have a really great time together, and you won't want to miss that either. Whether it be the Good Friday service Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Riverbend Essentials, or the way that we are opening this place up to impact our community in this way, if you volunteer your time by coming in and serving in some capacity, I just want to say thank you for that. Thank you we can't do this with just the staff that we have here. It takes people stepping up, and so I thank you for giving of your time in that way. If you are an artist or a creative or someone that has put something together for us, whether it be songs or pieces that have come together, we thank you for those talents. We thank you for the things that you have contributed that make this place unique, that make Riverbend Riverbend. And if you're a person that gives of your money financially in order to make this place do what it does, then I say thank you for that as well. It doesn't go unnoticed, and it is legitimately impossible without it. So thank you for your contributions. Thank you for calling this place your home. And what's amazing about something like an egg extravaganza where we have 10,000 eggs out on the field is I know sometimes it might feel like we have no idea what God is doing in that moment, but God knows exactly what he's doing with all 10,000 of those eggs. He knows exactly what he's doing with this place, and it's because of you that he's able to move in that way. It's an honor and a privilege that we actually get to come alongside our Lord in that way and actually serve this community. And so it's with that heart that we'll pray today. And for those of you that give, most people give online and through the app, and there's a texting method now. But for those of you that still write checks or give of cash, you can do that. We have the black boxes on the mezzanine. You can give in that way as well. But however it is you choose to participate this morning, I just say thank you. And would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this morning, for this family, for this home that you've brought us into. God, for all of the things that you continue to do in and around and surrounding this ministry. God, it is you and only you that can move through events like a Good Friday service or the celebration of Easter where we get to celebrate your resurrected Son, or even the extravaganza. You are the only one that can move in the heart of a child playing a carnival game. But we believe in the God that can do that. And we are honored and privileged and blessed to be part of that blessing, to impact this community and this area with you. So we thank you, we love you. We give back to you with joy this morning. And all God's people said, amen.
Do you want to hear something unbelievable? We have something in common. Not just you and me, all of us. Every person on the planet. No matter how different we may be, or how much distance divides our experiences, there is one thing that every person has in common: belief. Over the coming weeks, we're going to put our beliefs to the test by asking some difficult questions. On your way into the service today, you were handed a small piece of paper. At the end of this video, we're going to put up a handful of questions on the screen, and we want you to pick one of the questions and write your answer on the paper. When you're done, you'll be able to drop your card in the baskets on your way out. If you're joining us online, you can answer the question by using the link or the code on your screen. We want you to be completely honest with what you write. Every submission is anonymous, so I'm challenging you to risk being vulnerable. Don't hold back. Then on Easter Sunday, we're going to take all the responses and use them to create something unbelievable. You ready? Here we go. Believe it or not. Anybody heard that phrase before? Believe it or not? It was a phrase that was copyrighted, trademarked, by a man named Leroy Robert Ripley in 1919. 1918 and 1919, Robert Ripley was an illustrator and a cartoonist for the Washington Globe newspaper. In 1919, he began drawing a cartoon that he called Ripley's Believe It or Not. And over the years, the cartoon became syndicated in papers around the world, and it featured cartoon panels with incredible facts or unbelievable observations about people in the world that we lived in. For example, in the mid-1930s, he published a panel that featured a man from Tampa, Florida, named Senor A. Rodriguez, who it is said smoked 10 cigars a day for 52 years. And according to Ripley's math, that was over 237,000 cigars. This was an amazing fact that Ripley cataloged, and in 1924, they syndicated his cartoon panels in papers literally around the world. It became so popular that in the late 1930s and early 1940s, it was estimated that 80 million people a week saw his cartoons. Deal with that, Joe Rogan. This was in the year before the internet. In fact, in the first 3 weeks of May of 1932, the United States Postal Service reported that Robert Ripley was delivered 2 million individual pieces of mail in a 3-week period. That's 100,000 fan letters, observations, and critiques that he received every day for 3 weeks. He was the most popular cartoonist in the world, believe it or not. But what was it? What did Ripley tap into? What did he understand that resonated with so many tens of millions of people? I think what it was Ripley found the tipping point. He found the razor's edge. He found that place in between that which was unbelievable and that which had to be believable, that which was terrorizing and that which was terrific. He found the tipping point, the place between faith and fear, belief and doubt. See, I believe we are fashioned as human beings to live on that razor's edge. We are most alive. We experience life in its fullest when we are in that place where faith and doubt and belief and fear are held in balance. We know it. We experience it. We often experience moments like that. In those moments, just before that big interview where if we get the job, it will change the course of our lives. If you're an athlete, it's that moment just before the big game, the game that will decide or win or lose the championship. It's those moments in life that we describe as giving us a feeling in the pit of our stomach that are energized with adrenaline. They are the things that make us feel absolutely most fully present and fully alive. That's why there's so many people that are losing their minds for extreme sports. What kind of nut job would climb up the side of a rock wall, hundreds or thousands of feet in the air with no rope support? These are free climbers. There are people that do this all the time, and they climb up the sides of mountains or over boulders, knowing that just one misplaced hand or one slip of their foot means certain death. There are people that jump off of completely safe buildings. They jump off the top of perfectly good bridges. They call it base jumping, and they release their parachutes just seconds before they become a stain on the earth. And then there are these total nut jobs who do this thing called slacklining. And that's like a tightrope, except it's slack. I think what's slack is their neurons in their brains. And these people stretch these slack lines across canyons and in between buildings. And literally, their life is hanging by a thread. And all of them will tell you, And all of us have experienced that adrenaline-soaked moment where we feel fully present and fully alive. It is that tipping point between faith and fear, between belief and doubt. Now, we don't often live there because most of the time we are oppressed by our fears and our doubts, and they weigh us down, and we find ourselves focusing on our anxieties and our pessimism and our fears, and it creates in us a cynicism and ultimately a hopelessness that holds us hostage as we live our lives out of balance. But perhaps you never considered that faith can do the same thing to us. That if we live in unchallenged faith, if we live a faith in the absence of doubt, if we have belief in the absence of fear, if it is never challenged or tested, it can become dogma, it can become hollow, it can become liturgical, and ultimately meaningless and worthless. You see, we were meant to live on that razor's edge. But how do we do it? How in the wide world of sports do we live in that place where we hold in perfect balance our faith and our fear, our belief and our doubt? I've wrestled with this for some time, and I'm not sure that I have the answer completely, but I want to share with you a suggestion about how we find that balance between faith and fear and belief and doubt. I want to suggest today how we can do it, how we can be fully alive and fully faithful. But before we talk about that, would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight, that you would use your word spoken by your servant and anointed by your Spirit to challenge us to be courageous in the face of fear, not to live without doubt, but to live beyond it. Pray that for myself and for my family and for all of us here. And I ask that in Jesus' name, amen. One of the requirements of an occupation like mine, if you are a minister or a pastor or a reverend, is that you are invited in to some of the most intimate moments in people's lives. In many cases, this is the moments when people are facing the end of their lives. Countless times I have been invited into homes and into hospital rooms and into family gatherings where the conversation is about the things of eternity and the things that we face when death is certain. I have been in the room as people have breathed their last breath or have received the diagnosis that the time is running out on their lives. And you don't have to be a ministry professional to know there are things that people want to hear in those moments. I think there are things that all of us want to hear when we are at death's door, when the reality of the abyss and the unknown of what happens after this life is fully present. And I think we all know the things that we would like to hear. I think we would like to hear that it's going to be okay. That even though we will miss you, your family will be okay. They will be fine. You don't need to worry about them. That things will work out. But I think most of all we want to hear that heaven is real. That there is life after this life. And most of all we want to hear that we will be there. And as a ministry professional, I realize these are the things that people are asking me to say to them. But it's a complicated thing. It's a complicated thing because in many cases, I'm invited to be with people who I've never met before. This is someone's parent. This is someone's neighbor. This is someone's uncle or cousin. This is a friend of a friend. And they ask if I can come and see this person, and I know absolutely nothing about them. And I have this strange commitment to telling the truth. And so as I'm sitting there and I know the things that they want to hear and I know the things that they should say, I'm conflicted. Not to mention that I am not sure exactly what I believe about where they are, because I don't know them. And I find myself repeating the words of a man whose name we don't know. We meet him in Mark's gospel. And I find myself repeating the words of Mark chapter 9, verse 24. Lord, I believe. Help me in my unbelief. Now, Mark chapter 9 begins with one of the most amazing and under-evaluated events in the entire gospel story. Mark chapter 9 begins with Jesus pulling aside 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. He leaves the other 9 disciples in a village or at a campsite, and the 4 of them hike up to a mountaintop, and there on the mountaintop, it tells us in Mark chapter 9, verses 2 and 3, that Jesus pulls back the veil. He drops the curtain on his deity. And they see him in this timeless sort of reality as fully God. And the only way they know how to describe it is that he became white and dazzling white. His garments were as white as any bleach, whiter than any bleach could ever get them. He shone with the light of eternity. And we have no idea whether they were there for a moment or whether they were there in a space beyond time. But they experienced Christ in the fullness of his glory. And as they are coming down from the mountain, it says in Mark chapter 9, verse 14, that they noticed that a crowd had gathered around the remaining 9 disciples, and there was an argument going on with the religious leaders. And as Jesus and Peter and James and John were walking toward them, the people in the crowd saw them, and they recognized Jesus, and they ran to him. And as they ran to him, Jesus says, whoa, 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 what's all this arguing about? He knew what was going on. But he gave an opportunity for a man to come forward. And the man came forward and he said, well, I'm the cause of this. You see, I brought my son so that you could heal him. You see, he's suffering from an affliction where an evil spirit takes over him and he has seizures and convulsions. And when this spirit comes over him, he goes into violent fits, and he grinds his teeth, and he foams at the mouth, and his body becomes rigid, and the spirit won't let him talk. And so Jesus has his disciples around him, and everybody's there, and then the man goes on and he says, and sometimes when the spirit comes over him and he throws him to the ground, he has seizures we can't control. And so I brought him to your disciples so that they could heal him. I like to imagine the disciples as this man came and they brought him, he brings him his son, and his son is having what we might call an epileptic seizure. And they're like, oh, okay, what do we do? What did Jesus do? What were the words that he said? What kind of, did he touch him? Did he rub his hands? Did he pray certain prayers? It's like me trying to figure out my Netflix password. It's like, how did this happen? And the reality is that Jesus didn't do the miracles the same way. And so the religious leaders are like, aha, I got it. And this is all a hoax. You guys are a bunch of charlatans. And so the man tells them that they couldn't cast him out. And Jesus probably looks at Peter, James, and John, and he shakes his head, probably does a face palm, says, how long do I have to put up with this? How many times do you have to see me do this? How many times do I have to repeat after you? How many times do I have to show you that you can trust me? Even when I'm not doing what you think I should be. How long does this have to go on? And he says, bring the boy to me. So they bring the boy to Jesus, and as they're approaching, the spirit inside of the boy throws him into a seizure, a violent convulsion. And he falls to the ground, and he's foaming at the mouth. And Jesus looks at the boy's father, and he says, how long has this been happening? He says, since he was a boy. The spirit sometimes overcomes him, and it throws him into a fire or into a body of water, trying to burn him to death or to drown him. And you can hear the desperation in the Father's voice. You ever had a family member or a friend, or maybe yourself, who is suffering from an illness that no one can figure out why, what's going on? You have symptoms, but no one can really put their finger on the cause. You know how frustrating that is? To go to doctor after doctor, to have test after test, and not be able to locate, okay, here's what's going on, then we can treat it. You ever had anybody who suffered from a mental illness? Who had thoughts that they could not control, and you watch them suffer from the anxiety or from the mood swings or from the physical seizures that would overcome them? You ever known anybody who has struggled with addiction, who knows that there is a better life, but they can't really set themselves free? They struggle with that disease and they wrestle with it. Have you ever known anyone like that? Have you ever been anyone like that? You know how confusing that is? How hopeless that feels? Well, multiply that times 1,000 when it's happening to your child. Every parent I know that is worth their salt would say, I would rather have that affliction myself than watch my child suffer in a way that I cannot help them. I don't even know what's wrong. I don't even know where to begin. And we hear the pain in that man's voice when he says to Jesus, I brought him to you so you can heal him if you can. Do what you can. You are my last hope. And Jesus says, if I can, if I want to, if I'm able. Let me tell you how this works. Any person can, anything is possible if a person believes. And we misunderstand this. We think that what Jesus is saying is if your faith is strong enough, if you believe in the right things, if your faith is orthodox enough, then you can get what you want. That you can eliminate fear and doubt from your life by having this overwhelming sense of faith. But that's not what Jesus is saying. What Jesus is saying is that if you have enough faith, you can stand up to your doubts. You can face your fears. It is possible to have a faith that is stronger than your fear. Not to have a faith that eliminates your doubts, but a faith that is willing to stare into those doubts and remain strong. Anything is possible to the person who has a faith that faces their fears and remains strong. This is when the man, and it's that equation. It's when our lives are pressed down by uncertainty and by things that we can't control and feelings that we don't understand and all of the struggles of life, and we find ourselves on that equilibrium trapped in our doubts and our fears. And the man says, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. And it's here that Jesus responds to the man with two provisions. He gives him two different perspectives, and it's the same provision that he makes for us. And the first provision that he makes for the man is he provides him with the miraculous. It goes on in verse 25 to say that Jesus reached out and he talked to the spirit that was inside of this boy. You see, they didn't understand psychological illnesses. In this sense, this was a manifestation of a spiritual problem. And while I believe that goes on to this day, we know that he addressed the issue directly. And he rebuked the evil spirit who had held this boy hostage, and he commanded him to leave him and never come back. And as soon as he said that, the boy fell over as if he was dead. And the people that were standing there were watching, and they began to whisper and murmur, he killed him. He didn't heal him, he killed him. But then Jesus reaches down and takes his hand and lifts him up, and the boy stood up completely healed. It was a miracle. Or was it? Have you ever seen a miracle? Ever seen one? Ever seen a miracle? Did any of you watch the golf tournament that took place across the street last week? The Dell Match Play? You watched that? You watched the golf? It was won by a guy named Scotty Scheffler, a UT grad, a homegrown boy. And when he won the tournament last week, he became the #1 golfer in the world. And I was watching on television on Sunday afternoon, and I watched as Scotty Scheffler hit a 403-yard drive. 403 yards, people. That's 4 football fields. That's a quarter of a mile. He hit a golf ball a quarter of a mile. And you may say, well, that's not a miracle. I can tell you, if I ever hit a golf ball a quarter of a mile, it'd be a flat-out miracle, like the parting of the Red Sea or Jesus walking on the water. But you say, well, of course it went 403 yards. It was a downhill, dogleg right, and he hit the perfect shot, and it bounced on the road, and it rolled about 80 yards. Of course he hit it 403 yards. He's a professional. He's the #1 ranked golfer in the world. He has hit tens of thousands of shots like that. He has body mechanics that are perfect. His focus was complete. He's a great athlete. That wasn't a miracle. It was just a byproduct of all of his talent and all of his hard work and that opportunity. If you were being wheeled into an emergency room and you had a traumatic injury or a fatal illness, and as they wheeled you into the emergency room, a team of doctors and nurses and technicians swung into action, and they applied all of their skill and all of their training to your care. And a surgeon attended to you, and that surgeon proceeded to perform an operation that literally saved your life. Would you say that was a miracle? Or would you say, no, that was decades of education. That was tens of thousands of hours of professional experience. That was trained and dedicated men and women who put themselves in harm's way to intervene and to save your life. It was just coincidence. It was just the circumstances. It wasn't really a miracle. You ever been in a place where you didn't know how you were going to get through that moment? You have a car wreck, or you have a financial wreck, or you have a problem that you can't see your way through, and you're not sure how you're going to make it through the next hour or the next day or the next week or the next month, and somebody shows up, and somebody has the resources or the advice or just the shoulder to lean on. They're the right person there at the right time. And you look back and you say, that person literally saved my life. And what do you say? That was just luck? That just happened? That was just coincidence? You see, it takes as much faith to believe that everything that happens in this world just happens coincidentally. It just happens randomly. It takes just as much faith to believe that as it does to believe that there is a God who knows what's going on. There's a God who is aware of the architecture of both the good and the bad of the universe. It's just as crazy to say that was God at work as it is to say it was just coincidence. You see, Jesus provides us with a glimpse of the miraculous. But the miraculous is there for us to find, believe it or not. If you do a forensic examination of your life and you look at the circumstances and the people who crossed your paths, and you begin to connect the dots, and you begin to do what I call forensically finding the fingerprints of God on your life, you begin to see that all of the struggles and all of the blessings and all of these things are working together for a purpose. See, what he provided the man with and his son was a miracle. He was a son who was suffering from epilepsy or spiritual demon possession or some psychological disorder. And in a moment, he healed him. And I'm confident that there were people there who saw that happen, who said, well, that was interesting. Who perhaps hours later or days later or weeks later or months later or years later said, I'm not sure that was a miracle. We know that because it tells us that when the boy fell down, they began to doubt right then. He didn't heal him, he killed him. The boy is dead. Doubt crept in right as they were watching the miraculous take place. And just like Jesus provided a miracle for them, he provides the miraculous for us. It's just a question of whether or not we will believe it, whether or not we will see it. The second thing that he provides comes through prayer. It doesn't just come through the power of the miracle, it comes through the power of prayer. At the end of the story, it tells us that after everyone had left, Jesus was alone with his disciples. And they asked him, why couldn't we cast out that demon? We couldn't remember the password. How do you unlock this thing? How do we unlock what you do all the time? And he said, the only way that happens, the only way that things like this are pushed back against, that this, in this case, this spirit was cast out, is through much prayer. Now, what I wish this meant was that if I prayed the right prayer, things would happen according to the way I want them to happen. It's kind of like a magic formula. And I think that's how we treat prayer. We treat prayer like some superstition, like a lucky rabbit's foot. If we say the right words or we repeat the right phrases or we get the liturgy or the behavior right, then we manipulate God into responding to our desires. But prayer is not an exercise, it's not a liturgical exercise. It's an exercise in letting go. In letting go of our expectations, in letting go of our anxieties, in letting go of our fears, because we are finding ourselves pushed into the arms of a compassionate God. And prayer is meant to be an intimate conversation that relieves us of our fears, that lifts up our hopes. You see, doubt is the habitation of the coward. Fear is the place of the lazy. I believe that we live in a universe, we live in a world where the universe puts its thumb on the scale and it presses down and it naturally seeds in us fear and doubt. From the time that our feet hit the floor in the morning to the time that we go to bed at night, every moment is a mystery. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. The world that we live in is trying to kill us all the time. And that we are entering into mystery and uncertainty with every breath. And the thumb is on the scale of fear and doubt. And it takes no courage to live there. But it takes courage, it takes commitment, it takes conviction to let the hand of God lift our hopes and strengthen our faith and to give us confidence beyond ourselves. See, the paradigm is not, I have to eliminate my fear and doubt in order to have faith and to believe. No, I simply have to intentionally build my faith. And I have to overcome unbelief by strengthening what I believe. In 2005, when I came to Riverbend to become the pastor of Riverbend, I inherited a number of challenges. Not just financial challenges and the challenges of a wounded congregation who had lost their beloved pastor, the challenge of following in the footsteps of a generational communicator, one of the most popular preachers in America. Among the challenges that I inherited, I also inherited a number of blessings. And one of the blessings that I inherited was an executive assistant. Gerald Mann had a loyal executive assistant. Her name was Chris Weil. And Chris was Gerald's executive assistant for almost a decade. And when I came to Riverbend, I had to find out whether or not Chris would be willing to stick around. So after I was here a week or two, I had a meeting with Chris in my new office, and I sat down with her and I said, I understand if you can't stay. I understand if your loyalty to Gerald was such that you'd have a hard time working comfortably with me. I understand that this season might be over for you. And so you can go on your way with my blessing. I'd love for you to stay, but don't feel an obligation. And she looked at me and she said, no, I'd really like to stay. I'd like to give it a shot. But you have to promise me one thing. And I looked at her and stared into her green eyes, and she said, don't ever bullshit me. Okay. Now, I should have seen that coming because Chris had red hair. And it should have been like a warning light on the top of her head going, danger, danger, danger. She wasn't kidding. She said, always tell me the truth. Always be honest with me. And I will always be honest with you. And over the 10 years that we worked together, she kept that promise. She was my harshest critic and my most loyal defender. No one got to me if they came through her. It was on January the 27th, 2015, that I sat in the operating waiting room at Seton Hospital. For about a month or two before that, Chris had been experiencing headaches and blurred vision and slurred speech. She had fallen down a number of times and even passed out, had fainting spells on a couple of occasions. And finally, after everyone pushing her and encouraging her, she finally went to the doctor. And sure enough, the CAT scan revealed that she had a brain tumor. And on January the 27th, I sat in the waiting room with her husband, Jeff, as the neurosurgeon came out, shaking his head, as you never want to see them do, saying, I got what I could. But the glioblastomas of this kind, you can't get them all surgically. We'll turn it over to an oncologist and they'll do what they can. But you need to prepare for what's about to happen. And so she went through a brutal round of chemo there the first few months, and then she was invited into an experimental program at MD Anderson in Houston. They said, we're not sure this is going to work, but we've had some success with this kind of tumor, and they put her on that experimental treatment, and it worked. I remember that the summer of 2016, standing up here with CAT scans that showed Chris's tumor the size of a golf ball 6 months earlier and the size of a pinhead at that time. And we rejoiced. We celebrated as a congregation. God was doing this miraculous work and was healing Chris. In fact, she felt good enough a year after her diagnosis that she and Jeff took a road trip, a bucket list trip, the length of Route 66, all the way to Santa Monica, California, in her white Mustang convertible. But as they returned from that trip, so did the cancer. And it came back with a vengeance. And within a few weeks, she lost the ability to speak and then to move. And it was on July the 3rd, 2016, that Diane and I went to Chris's home. She was in hospice care at her home with her husband, Jeff. And I said the things I needed to say. I said the things I'm supposed to say. I said the things I knew Jeff needed to hear. And then I asked Jeff and Diane to leave the room. I closed the door. I put the railing down on her bed, her hospital bed that she was in, and I climbed in the bed next to her. And I laid next to her, and she couldn't move, really. But she managed to turn her head, and with her piercing green eyes, just stared at me. She moved her lips, and I knew exactly what she was saying. And I said, Chris, I have to go, but I want you to know this. I will see you soon. And the truth of that was that I knew that if she lived another 24 hours, I would see her the next day. Or that if she did not, in a way that I cannot explain, I would see her in the next moment. What may pass for me as 20 or 30 or 40 years, for her, was the next moment. And I truly believe that. See, this is where we have to live. We have to live on the razor's edge. We live on the tipping point. We live at that place in between faith and fear and belief and doubt. Because that's where we are fully alive. Not because we eliminate fear and doubt from our world or from the universe. We can't eliminate them, but we can develop our faith and our hope and our belief to be strong enough that we can be courageous enough that in spite of the fear and in spite of the doubt, we look it in the eye and we say, we will not be moved. And I will not go quietly into that good night. And we intentionally are men and women who believe. Believe it or not, the choice is ours. Leroy Robert Ripley died in 1949, but there were a small contingent of people that worked for him that carried on his legacy. They continued to produce the Ripley's Believe It or Not panels and cartoons. And at the end of his life, Ripley had collected 20,000 or more photographs of some of these unusual things that he had documented, 30,000 artifacts, and 100,000 cartoon strips and panels. The Ripley's archives were purchased by a company that incorporated as Ripley Entertainment. They moved to Orlando, Florida a couple of decades ago, and they now have museums all around the world. There are 80 attractions that are in Ripley's Believe It or Not name that draw 12 million visitors a year. In fact, they still publish Ripley's Believe It or Not cartoon panels. There was one that came out in 2014, and in this panel, it had a picture of Vladimir Putin with a halo over his head. And it basically said that there was a sect of nuns in a convent in Russia who worshiped Vladimir Putin as the reincarnation of the Apostle Paul. They may want to rethink that, don't you think? Believe it or not.
Filled, the wounded healed, the broken back together. The poor are blessed, the weary rest. We will dance forever. The blinded see, the chained are free. The doubtful now believers, and outcasts known, the orphan home. You are my Redeemer. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new. Return, the voiceless heard, the mourner now rejoicing. The mountains shake, the world awake, creation all composing. The sad untrue, the earth renewed, the song has found its singer,
May you see God in your day to day, your week, the highs, the lows, the good, the bad. So grateful for you to be here. We'll see y'all next Sunday. Go in peace.